Heads up, if you're at the wrong Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church, this is the one in Houston, Texas. My name is Audrey Gale Hall. I'm the membership coordinator here, and I'm so glad to welcome you in as our community of faith, reason, and affection welcomes all to grow in mind and spirit as together we build a better world. If you're joining us for the first time this morning, we extend a special welcome to you and invite you to fill out one of our yellow visitor cards so that you can receive more information about Emerson and our activities. That's how you get a hold of me, the membership coordinator. I check the basket out in the gathering place, so on your way out, you can feel free to drop me a note there. Also, those of y'all who are here online in YouTube can check the chat for the Connect form there, which works the same way. I will get back to you. We're a church, y'all, in many places. That's why we have people joining us from YouTube. Some of us are here in the pews, but those of y'all online are also part of this church. Our world is a different one than in early 2020, so our worship services have changed. We're giving people choices in the pews about social distancing and masking, but we are continuing to collect our offerings up at the front of the sanctuary on y'all's left and right, as well as in the back in the center. For those of y'all who are here with me presently, let's take a moment and visualize the dozens of neighbors, friends, fellow UUs tuning in over the course of this week or right now, those who are in our beloved community but not present with us physically. One other heads up before we get started, y'all. For anyone who's interested in Sunday school, we will have religious education students exit with Katie after the offering is collected. Here's one reminder to silence your cell phones as we welcome in our guest preacher today, C.B. Beal, whose pronouns are they, them, theirs. C.B. is a preacher, storyteller, educator, and consultant who works with congregations and youth-serving organizations around issues of justice, including diversity, equity, and justice, consent education, safer communities and congregations, and supporting gender creative and trans and non-binary children and youth. CB was the Unitarian Universalist Association's 2019 Angus H. McLean Award for Excellence in Religious Education and preaches and teaches nationally. Following the worship service, y'all, folks in the pews can head out to the courtyard and playground to chat and have coffee and snacks, although I think this is our first week that they'll be here in the gathering place. But if you want to brave the heat, you're still welcome to gather in the courtyard. Those of you here on Zoom can also stick around because board trustee Marilyn Rambo is going to be hosting small group discussion there, which is a chance for you to reflect on the service and what's going on in your lives. And now for our prelude.
is life encounters life. The story this morning is called There's No Such Thing as a Dragon. It's by Jack Kent, as told by me. Billy Bixby was rather surprised when they woke up one morning and found a dragon in their room. It was a small dragon, about the size of a kitten. The dragon wagged its tail happily as Billy patted its head. Billy went downstairs to tell their mother. "There's no such thing as a dragon," said Billy's mother, and she clearly really meant it. Billy went back to their room and began to get dressed. The dragon came close to Billy and waggled its tail, but Billy didn't pat it. If there's no such thing as something, it's silly to pat it on its head. Billy washed their hands and face and went down to breakfast. The dragon went along. It was bigger now, almost the size of a dog. Billy sat down at the table. The dragon sat down on the table. This sort of thing was not usually permitted, but there wasn't much Billy's mother could do about it. She had already said there's no such thing as a dragon, and if there's no such thing as something, you can't very well tell it to get down off the table. Mother made some pancakes for Billy, but the dragon ate them all. Mother made some more, but the dragon ate those too. Mother kept making pancakes until she ran out of batter. Billy got only one of them, but they said that's all they really wanted anyway. Billy went upstairs to brush their teeth. Mother started cleaning the table. The dragon, who was quite as big as Mother by this time, made itself comfortable on the hallway rug and went to sleep. By the time Billy came back downstairs, the dragon had grown so much it filled the hallway. Billy had to go around by way of the living room just to get to where their mother was. "I didn't know dragons grow so fast," said Billy. "There's no such thing as a dragon," said Mother. Mother spent all morning going back and forth between the computer on her desk in the kitchen while Billy played. She told herself that she went the long way around through the den for the exercise, not because there was a dragon in the hallway by the kitchen. After lunch, Mother started going out the kitchen window and then back in the room with her computer since the dragon had blocked all the doors in the hallway. She told herself that it was for the fresh air, since there's no such thing as a dragon. By mid-afternoon, the dragon filled the whole house. Its head hung out the front door and down the steps. Its tail hung out the back door, and there wasn't a room in the house that didn't have some part of the dragon in it. The dragon snored softly, and the whole house vibrated every time it took a breath. When the dragon woke up from its nap, it was hungry. A bakery truck went by. The smell of fresh bread was more than the dragon could resist, and the dragon ran down the street after the bakery truck. The house went along, of course, like a shell on a snail or a house on a dragon. The mail carrier was just coming up the path with some mail for the Bixbys when their house rushed past him and headed down the street. He chased the Bixbys' house for a few blocks, but he couldn't catch it. People came out of their houses and onto their porches as first the house, and then the mail carrier went by. At first, they thought it was like one of those surprise parades for birthdays that we're having during COVID, but that was it, just the two of them, until a little bit later, Mr. Bixby came home after his long day at work, and the first thing he noticed was that his house was missing. Luckily, one of the neighbors was able to call from the porch to tell him which way that it went. Mr. Bixby got on his bicycle and went looking for the house. He studied all the other houses as he went along, and finally, he saw one that looked familiar. Billy and Mrs. Bixby waved to him from an upstairs window. Mr. Bixby climbed over the dragon's head, up its neck, and onto the porch roof, and went in the house through an upstairs window. He took a deep breath so that he could speak with that extra calm voice. "How did this happen?" "It was the dragon," said Billy. "There's no such thing," Mother began to say. Billy said firmly, "No, there is a dragon. It's a very big dragon, and it's right there." And Billy patted the dragon on its head. And the dragon waggled its tail very happily, and then, faster than it had grown, the dragon started getting smaller, until soon it was kitten-sized again. "Oh, said Mother. "I don't mind dragons this size, but why did it have to grow so big?" "I'm not sure," said Billy, "but I think it needed to be noticed." Thanks for listening to my story today.
Is a transformative act. As a congregation, we collect an offering not for ourselves or for our own faith community, but to give to others as a collective action of our community and a way to live out our shared values. So today, please give generously to support our July Share the Plate recipient, Memorial Assistance Ministries. Memorial Assistance Ministries, or MAM, offers a range of programs to help families do more and go further than they can do alone. The programs are focused on building financially stable families, a stronger workforce, and healthy, supportive communities. Also, local UU churches, y'all know this already, have teamed up to hire a coordinator for UU the Vote efforts this year, encouraging people across Houston to vote. Back in 2020, having a coordinator was super helpful for us, and we hope to improve on our record in this important election year. Emerson's share is $3,000. Special donations are appreciated. You could make a check out to Emerson UU Church, earmarked UU the Vote Coordinator. While we're raising these funds, 25% of our Share the Plate offerings will temporarily go to this account instead of Meals on Wheels, our usual. Let's all pitch in and make this happen. We have 4 ways to give. You can text the number on the screen, go to our webpage for online giving, or you can put it in our offering basket, or mail a check to the church. I invite you now to please be as comfortable as your body can be. Feel your feet on the floor or on the footrest so that you might feel more grounded, more connected to the earth which nourishes and sustains us all. Choose to close your eyes or gaze unfocused at a single spot, a candle, a flower, your cat's flicking ear. And take a deep breath in, as together we enter a time of meditation, followed by silence. These are the words of Diego Valeri. You who have an eye for miracles, regard the bud now appearing on the bare branch of the fragile young tree. It's a mere dot, a nothing, but already it's a flower, already a fruit, already its own death and resurrection. Let us into silence together. Amen, and blessed be. These are words from the morning cycle. How can you joke when the world is falling around us? Someone asks, appalled. My friend says, sometimes 2 things are true at once, and it's hard to be a person. In those past days, we'd all supported one another around outrage and worry, depression and fear. We'd spoken of middle-of-the-night insomnia, raising children, drinking and TV programs, and how much we missed smoking. About the unacceptable role of the United States in state violence abroad. I'd shared with close friends on social media some jokes, music videos, footage of a kitchen mishap involving a cat and oatmeal.
and about my mom's date with a pacemaker. Personal struggles, our complicity in a social world that unfairly privileges some of us, while abusing and injuring others of us, often in the same body, because sometimes two things are true at once. A natural world under assault, our complicity in this too. It's hard to be a person. The day-to-day fight for mental health, grief and loss, pain and illness, in our human need for levity, relief, and comfort. We must hold all of these things at the same time. We must accept comfort when it is offered, laugh when there is opportunity, be generous with one another as we experience these awful things differently. Thank you. Hello and good morning. It is a blessing to be back among you. If you remember from last time, I do like words, so settle in. This morning, I'm going to talk about preemptive radical inclusion. The idea of preemptive radical inclusion is really quite simple. Those of us who hold any kind of leadership responsibility, which as Unitarian Universalists, I understand to be all of us, in different ways and at different times, we have the responsibility to learn, change, and grow in order to preemptively create radical changes that will include people in our collective movement towards equity and justice. We choose to get free together. The physical version of this is universal design, designing buildings for all to use, right? A wheelchair ramp, for instance. We don't wait until we know someone who needs a ramp in order to build it. Physical accessibility has become part of how we do business. We continually learn and grow and develop ways to ensure that people, regardless of their mobility needs, can access spaces and be included among us. In the process, those people experience more equity and justice in their ability to move throughout the world. Preemptive radical inclusion is both a practice and a perspective. But I get ahead of myself. The last time I was here, I mentioned that I come from 400 years of English and Scottish New Englanders. My family's like Puritans are us. We come from people with names like Harbottle Grimscott. People who cling to offensively radical individualism and the absolute assuredness that our way is the right way and the only way. Puritans weren't big on feelings, or words for feelings. Do you remember this? Remember mine? I had 3 feeling words: mad, sad, and what was the other one? Oh yeah, mad. Puritans weren't good at noticing their own or other people's feelings. And those of us who come from Puritan roots, and those of us who come from the more theoretically generic white people, individualistic and perfectionist culture, and those of us who might not come from it, but nonetheless swim in its waters, well, this is a really tough time to be us. What with our individualism and not many feeling words, pandemic, attempted overthrow of the government in the Capitol, economic recession and unemployment, continued police violence, gun violence. Some of us are vaccinated and it's enough to make us safe. And others of us are vaxxed and boosted and still can't be out in the world near people who aren't wearing masks. Individualism and not many feeling words is not doing us a favor right now. Mad, sad, and what was the other one? I was raised on a farm, so my roots were not just Puritan, but I was raised, socialized with cows, with a strong belief in productivity, American exceptionalism, and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. I was raised to think carefully and logically about something. If the tractor wouldn't start, it had to be a problem with fuel, fire, or air. I was raised to know how to think, to believe there was just the one way to approach things, and since I was good at it, the thinking, I would of course be right. So many of us were raised to believe our own thoughts and our ideas so much that we don't even notice sometimes when we're having an idea instead of remembering a fact. We have a thought and we assume it's true. I think somehow this is a way our brain tries to keep us at the center of an incredibly complex universe. Now, in my own life, relying on my assessment has led me to some unfortunate circumstances. When I went to the seminary in the mid-1980s as a young adult, I was quite confident that I knew so much. So much! It was seminary where I first experienced someone who told me they were allergic to gluten. Gluten, I said. Who's allergic to gluten? Humans have been eating wheat as a basic staple for thousands of years. People aren't allergic to staples. This tone of voice and this look on my face, that's disbelieving contempt. I still didn't know my feeling words, so I was pretty sure that only other people were contemptuous. I was just confused. Then, someone else kept asking us not to wear perfume because she was allergic to scents and fragrances. How could you be allergic to fragrances? Smell is just smelling. No one's allergic to smelling. I didn't have enough knowledge then to understand that the smell of something is a chemical compound ingested through the nose. If someone is sensitive to a chemical, it could get in as easily through the nose as if one ate it. I didn't know that in the United States there's a few hundred chemicals used in fragrances that are banned in Europe because of dangerousness. I didn't have enough knowledge then to understand, and, oh my goodness, and I couldn't simply believe them. I had to substitute my personal experience of no sensitivity to perfume for this woman's lived experience. My beliefs and my experiences trumped hers to the extent that I mocked her. Subsequently, and possibly as proof of a deity who exists solely to provide me with awkward learning opportunities, I have become a person with celiac disease who can't eat even microscopic bits of gluten. Oh, but wait, because there's more. I don't learn that well. I'm also now a person who's incredibly sensitive to petroleum products and chemical compounds and flowers and grass and, trees, lots of things that have been around for 10,000 years. So I've been this person who uses their own reality to judge others. And at the beginning of this section, I called this unfortunate. And I can now find some humor in it as a cautionary tale. But my attitude and my behavior was really harmful. I hurt people. I had to learn to believe people, to believe the emerging consensus of a group when they shared their experience of life in their bodies or in this country. And that meant that I had to learn not to believe my own thoughts automatically. Because I could only think within the framework I had been taught. I had to learn to differentiate ideas from truths and hypotheses from facts. I had to learn that the dragon gets bigger when people pretend it isn't real. The dragon might be the current COVID risk, which we all wish wasn't real. It might be how deep our transphobia or racism are. The dragon that we all want to pretend isn't there might be going back to the way things used to be, which would actually be the end of us all. I can't tell you what the dragons are, but I can tell you that if we don't tell the truth about them, they will get bigger and bigger until they run away with our house. And the truth might not be what we already think and believe. I told you the last time I was here, I think, that as a child, I was considered a gender non-conforming girl, a tomboy, which, where I grew up, meant failed girl. As an adult, it took a long time to find language for my gender, and I went through a lot of attempts to try to figure out what kind of woman am I. And all these attempts added up to this long string of words. I'm a tomboy, farm girl, masculine of center, butch, queer, womanish type person. Well, thank goodness for people exploring gender and language, and now I can simply say, I could have had a V8. I'm non-binary. I'm not a kind of a woman. I'm non-binary. And I still make mistakes sometimes because change is hard. When today's story was written in 1975, Billy Bixby's pronoun was understood to be he, but last year Billy let me know that it's they now. I don't always remember when I tell the story. Sometimes, right in the middle of the story, I misgender Billy. My job as a human, as a Unitarian Universalist, is to believe Billy and people like them when they tell me who they are, and when I make a mistake, to correct it and practice in private so that I don't cause more harm. But not everyone corrects themselves. Some people deny my and Billy's experience. All too often people say, non-binary, non-binary trans? That's not a thing. I've never heard of it. I can't imagine it. No one is non-binary. There have been women and men for thousands of years, and that's it. Where I need people to believe me, to accept my experience in the emerging consensus among gender nonconforming people that there are more than two genders. People instead substitute their own experience and their own judgment. So I've been this person who doesn't believe someone else's experience, substituting my thoughts. And I am a person who other people don't believe my experience. Sometimes two things are true at one time. For me to be preemptively and radically inclusive of people, I must recognize that they experience their life and their circumstances in society in ways that I could not. Not just in ways that I don't, but ways that I couldn't. I've made the idea, don't believe everything you think, part of my personal daily perspective. It means that I must notice when my assumptions and other people's statements don't match up. And it's my responsibility to lean into the discomfort of the possibility that it is I who am wrong. Not to reach first to make them prove why they're right, but to reach first into myself to explore why am I so certain about their life. It is a remarkably humbling practice when I do it right. Preemptive radical inclusion is both a perspective and a practice. It means that we preemptively seek the emerging consensus of people and groups who are marginalized and oppressed in ways that we're not, so that we can prepare ourselves to be radically inclusive. In this way, those of us who are cisgender can learn about the oppression of trans people by listening to trans people. We who are white learn about how people of color experience marginalization and oppression by listening, reading, and reflecting, and regularly checking our thoughts. We can learn about these things and change our own behavior where it might be hurtful or unknowingly support the marginalization we claim to be against. We UUs sought out emerging consensus when we engaged in the white supremacy teach-in 6 years ago and widening the circle of concern recently by reading the common reads, Breathe, The Indigenous People's History, Defund Fear, This Year's Mistakes and Miracles. These are amazing books. We listen to podcasts and watch documentaries instead of another repeat of Agatha Christie. We might choose to join Beloved Conversations Virtual to help us explore this inheritance of believing everything we think, everything we have been taught, and only believing what we were taught the way we were taught. We could choose to join Beloved Conversations to explore the ways that we can dismantle the impact of white supremacy culture in all of us. Mad, sad, and what was the other one? We might join recovery groups that help us heal from past injuries or the patterns that we developed to cope with those injuries. We individually and collectively make consistent decisions to increase our ability to create equity and then justice. We learn that there is no checklist to inclusion, equity, and justice. It's not a one-off workshop, but a turning of our lives. One of the emerging places we need to be preemptively and radically inclusive is among ourselves as we create space to hold one another as new realities emerge. Some of us spent our whole lives with sad, mad, and mad as our only feeling words. We might display disregarding contempt without realizing that it's not mildly irritated. And then we're confused at how hurt someone else was. We might not realize that our initial response to new information is to think that it's stupid or wrong or too hard to bother with. We may not trust that our friends and congregants would respect us if they knew what we were really like inside. This emotional limitation hurts us, and it hurts one another. We need to move forward to be able to help one another with the incredible complexity of emotions during this time of economic, social, and political turmoil of pandemic. We must create and hold boundaries that help people feel heard and help people be safe. It means we have to stop allowing ourselves and others to muse aloud about someone else's life right in front of them. We have to recognize that we have been taught some unhealthy behaviors and untrue beliefs, and that if it took a lifetime to learn those, we will not unlearn them overnight. But we must, if we're going to become the beloved community we claim. We have to work on ourselves, not just some out there social problem. Us, me, you. We have a lot of unlearning to do if we want to truly be radically inclusive. And the truth is, we will not unlearn our unhealthy behaviors and our incorrect thoughts alone. Some of us have made it this far by believing in pulling oneself up by their bootstraps, only to just now during pandemic find out what it is if the boots are fragile or the straps missing. That radical individualism is a myth created and supported by communities of radical individualists who helped each other. Maybe we remember that those Puritans built their structures together and were taught how to farm on North American soil by indigenous people who willingly shared what they knew, not understanding that the Puritans and the other Europeans were taking, not sharing, the land. Maybe we remember that a neighbor lady fed Henry David Thoreau dinner every night and did his laundry while he was off in his woods, or that Jack Kerouac came home to his mom for several months a year so she could nurse him back to health after his adventures. Radical individualism is a lie perpetuated by a culture designed for patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism. And so many of us have bought into the ways these systems lead us to deny ourselves and one another in the service of power and money. In these next months and years, being inclusive is taking on a whole new frame. It's welcoming at the door, someone at the door with a smile and restructuring our language to include people of other genders. It is also a commitment to constantly work to increase our ability to make sure that everyone's needs are met, even as those needs are changing. As COVID shifts, as pressure to return to normal leaves people at home and alone unnecessarily. We must choose not to believe everything we think, to check our thoughts to determine if they are beliefs masquerading as fact. As we move forward, we'll have to offer and accept help in different ways. We can live into the reality that all of us actually means all of us. Because we can. We can make the decision that all of us truly means all of us. And we can do that because that's who we are, Unitarian Universalists. We are people who can choose to act preemptively to make the world a better place. Imperfectly, but within covenant and with commitment. We can choose to learn what we need to in order to create an inclusion that moves us closer to justice. We can choose to all get free together. Come with me, would you? Our closing hymn is hymn number 318, We Would Be One. As you go out now into the rest of your lives, wash your hands, wear your masks, love your people, and let them love you. Amen.
Seated. Thanks for joining us this morning. Before we head out to social time, I've got a few announcements. So number one is just a reminder that social time is here for you. Please take some time, meet someone new, reach out to a visitor, get to know each other. Second is that today's also open house. So 15 minutes from now, if you join me at the foot of the stairs, we'll head upstairs. An open house, for those of y'all who don't know, is a chance to learn about what it means to be a member at this church, a little bit about the principles of Unitarian Universalism and our sources, and to share what you would need from this community if you're interested in joining. It's also no pressure. The third announcement is that we have Lunch Bunch today. This is the third Lunch Bunch gathering, and today it's at Beck's Prime. All are welcome. Beck's Prime is at the corner of Westheimer and Augusta, and if you need that address, it's on the sign right outside in the gathering place. And now for our prelude, our postlude.